So I'm glad to see that there are a number of you who are interested in designing the experience of search, as I am. And if I were to add one additional word to the title, it would be designing the holistic search experience. And I'll explain more what exactly I mean by that. For the last 10 years or so, I've been working in sort of user interface design. I've worked on a number of sort of large web applications from like content management and customer relationship management. But for about the last 2 years or so, I've been focused specifically on the user experience of search. I work at a small London-based company called Twigkit, where we produce a framework for helping companies quickly build polished search user interfaces. And our product is currently being used in a number of organizations, from local government to national healthcare, broadcast media, aerospace and defense industries, government intelligence. And about 3 years ago, I made a bit of a transition, I guess you could call it, from small town Kentucky to London, England. And along with that move came, sort of, as you would expect, a bit of a change in lifestyle. And instead of driving everywhere I went, I found myself riding on the London Underground to get to work. But in the 3 years or so that I've lived in London, I've moved house maybe, I think, 4 times now. And it seems like each time we move, we sort of keep getting a bit further and further outside the city. So it went from taking the underground to work to catching the train. And just before Christmas, I now moved to a beautiful part of the world called Chislehurst, which is about 15 miles outside of London. And this is my 16-month-old who is apparently going out for his morning jog in the park just outside our house. So at that point, I was then cycling a couple of miles to get to the station to take the train in. And it was not too long after this that my wife and I sort of sat back and evaluated. Hey, we're living outside the city now. We have a child. It's probably time to consider getting a car. And I won't go into the harrowing process of actually getting a UK driver's license, the long drawn-out process. But when the time came to actually purchase a car, we did what a lot of people would do. We went to sort of the popular automotive websites, and in the UK at least, Auto Trader is sort of the de facto source for finding a car. So we went to Auto Trader, and the first question that it asked us is, "Oh, which make and model would you like to buy?" And at this point, I was like, I have no idea exactly which car I want to buy. That's why I'm here at the website. So I don't think I even had enough information to actually perform, an initial query. I sort of, I left and tried another website. And I think the next one that I came to was Consumer Reports. And again, they're asking for a specific make and model, but they at least provide a handful of categories that you can pick from, if you're not sure exactly which make and model you want to look at. But not being a Consumer Reports subscriber, I turned to a free version that I found called What Car. And it similarly, on the homepage, they had links to a handful of different categories, and from that, I was fairly sure that we wanted a small family car. So I selected that category, and here we have the first thing that they show me are their top 5 cars within that category, which at this point was exactly what I wanted to see. They also had some nice faceted navigation going down the side, and I was pretty sure that I really liked the hatchbacks, so I was able to narrow my selection further. Sort the results for so that the highest rated ones appear first, and voila, that's exactly what I was looking for at this stage in the process. And I was then able to, my wife and I were then able to, spend a number of hours combing through, reviews of what other people said about each of these cars, and trying to figure out which one was best for us. And so it wasn't until after, really hours of research, spread out over several days that, I was finally able to return to sites like AutoTrader and actually look for a particular make and model, sort of within a 30-mile radius of where I live. But I wasn't the only one making this decision. My wife was at home looking up cars. During my lunch break at the office, I would see what I could find. And we found it quite difficult to share our findings with one another. And so, not really having a better way, we just would send emails back and forth with and paste in URLs. And so here I have a good dozen emails, all with these filled with these cryptic URLs. And throughout this entire process, I was really left wondering, is this really the best we can do? Surely we can do better than this. That there's got to be room for improvement. And it's not just when it comes to buying a car. I think there are plenty of other activities that fit into a similar category. Think about when you are looking to book your next vacation. Maybe you go to a site like orbitz.com and are hoping that it will help you, figure out where to go on holiday. And again, the first question that it asks you is, hey, where do you want to go? And it doesn't actually help you figure that out very easily. So this is really what I'd like to talk about today, is to try to recast search in perhaps a broader light than we're accustomed to thinking of it in. And again, I think the key word is sort of holistic, like placing search in a broader context. And to accomplish that, I think we sort of have to go back to the early days of information retrieval. Sort of when it was getting started in the 1960s with the Cranfield paradigm, the aim of the game was very much about controlling all the variables in information retrieval, so that you could easily benchmark different algorithms and accurately compare them. And I think because of that, the wildest, most unpredictable variable of all, the user, was sort of controlled out of the experiment. And it wasn't until, I think, 1989, when Marcia Bates came out with her dynamic berry-picking model of information retrieval, that it was a real turning point in our understanding of search. And Bates understood that search isn't just about retrieving a perfect match, a perfect set of documents for a given query, but it was much more about helping users pick up nuggets of information along the way, so that the journey became, at least as important as sort of the destination. And the berry picking model sort of outlines the search process as the user, having a particular information need, entering a query, reviewing a few results, learning something from those results, and then iterating this process. And building on Marcia Bates' work was Gary Marcianini's defined 3 different levels or categories of search. And at the base of his hierarchy was what he called Lookup. And this is very much search as we know it. It's concerned with the individual query, with helping users review a single set of results. Examples of search as Lookup might be someone who's trying to figure out how many cups are in a pint, or what is the population of London. Straightforward things that they can easily look up, something they might find in a dictionary or encyclopedia. But building upon that is what he categorized as learning. And search in this context is a longer-term activity. It's whereas lookup might take place over half a minute or 5 minutes. Learning could take place over hours, days, weeks. Examples might be a graduate student who's researching for their thesis, or any one of us trying to figure out what home entertainment system that we want to buy, and the research that goes into that process. But then Marcianini also identified a 3rd level of search. And whereas lookup and learning are both concerned with the user going out and actively seeking information. Investigating occurs when those users have maybe sort of acquired the threshold of knowledge that they're after. And instead of going out and seeking information, they want certain information to be pushed back to them when certain events occur. And together, Marcianini classified learning and investigating, or he described those as exploratory search. So what I'd really like to do is delve into each of these three levels and look at the process involved in each of them. And the lookup process, I guess in especially the academic literature around information retrieval and information seeking, there's effort to try to figure out the formula of what does lookup search consist of. And it begins perhaps a bit earlier in the process than maybe we typically think. And it's simply when the user recognizes the need for information. And I guess what's important to realize here is that there are different types of information need. On the one hand, you have known item needs, and this is very much what we were describing before, where the user has something particular in mind, and it's simply a matter of looking it up, like you might in an encyclopedia. But there's also a case where the user might have a particular destination in mind, a website that they want to get to, but perhaps they can't remember the domain, or whatever the case, they do a search in order to get there. But in addition to known item and navigational queries, there's also a situation when the user isn't certain what they actually need to know. And in this case, it can be much more difficult to articulate a good search query, and we could loosely call this sort of exploratory as well. But once the user has recognized the need for information, they then need to formulate the query. And this is very much about simply getting a concept out of the user's mind and onto the screen, into the input device. I guess the biggest thing that we can do to help users through this phase of the process is by providing sort of as-you-type suggestions. And I think there's really sort of three genres of this. I guess the most basic of the three would be what you could call autocomplete. And here is where you're simply completing on a sort of a definitive list of entities. So it could be ticker symbols for company names, or maybe airport codes for particular airports in a city. But in addition to autocomplete, I guess a step up would be autosuggest. So here, it's not about completing on a list of entities, but actually suggesting things to the user to search for. So if I type a guitar into eBay, it not only helps me correctly spell that particular word, but it also suggests, hey, you should try electric guitar or acoustic guitar or Guitar Hero, and might suggest things to me that I wouldn't have thought about otherwise. And then a third genre of as-you-type completions is what I would call instant results. And here, rather than suggesting queries for the user to search for, search results are simply brought back and presented to the user right away. And the benefit of this solution would be you could, in theory, skip the search results page entirely and help the user get to what they're looking for more quickly. But of course, each of these is appropriate sort of in its own context. But once the user has recognized their need for information and formulated their query, they then need to execute that query. And sort of in the past, we didn't really have to think too much about this step in the process. We've relied on the browser to load the new page and provide the user the necessary cues of that the page is loading, and provide a progress bar and all of that. But today we're not as tied to the page model as we used to be, perhaps. And on the one hand, you have Google Instant, which simply brings back the results as you're typing in the query. But on the other hand, we have sites like Kayak, which far from delivering all the results in sub-second times. It could take 10, 15, 20 seconds for a kayak to bring back all the results from across the many different sources that it's searching. And kayak have to be much more proactive about indicating to the user what's actually happening. So as soon as the search button is clicked, the first thing that they do is pop up a modal saying, hey, we're about to start a new search. And then a second or two later, the modal and all the previous results disappear to be replaced by a message and a progress bar that appears on the left. And then results sort of come streaming back in. And you could contrast this approach to other sites like Orbits, which just make the user wait until all the results are loaded and then show the results all at once. I think one benefit that Kayak has is at first, the first results that are brought back tend to be sort of higher prices. So as the search progresses, the price drops by hundreds of dollars, which is probably a nice effect. But anyway, I think the point here is that we have to be very careful and I guess, detail-oriented in making sure the user is aware of sort of the state of the system and that new results are being loaded. Once the query has been executed, then of course the user gets to review the results that were returned. And just a few basic tips for how we can improve this process is, of course, to use clear titles to begin with. If you're an artist, you might be able to get away with calling your painting Untitled 49, but it doesn't work as well in search. And so being, either curating our titles carefully or trying to be clever and doing a good job of extracting some sort of meaningful title. Hit highlighting is also sort of an easy and quick way to help the user quickly scan through the results and figure out which ones are important to them. And one technique that I've been using more recently is to group similar results. Google, of course, do this for news items. They'll group together maybe 2, 3, or 4 news items and then insert those as a group into the result list as a whole. And this is something that we've been doing a bit more of recently when talking about federating together multiple sources of content. And once the user has reviewed the results, there's sort of a question mark as to what happens next. Perhaps they found what they were looking for on that query. Maybe they decided to just give up and quit the process, or they might have chosen to refine the query in some way. And that brings us, I guess, to the next sort of phase or level of search. And so, like we were saying, while Lookup is very much concerned with the individual query, we need to think about search in its wider context as well. And this is what Marcianini described as learning. And I think we can actually learn a bit from education and some concepts that have been around for a while in education. And I think that it actually applies surprisingly well to designing search-based applications as well. Carol Kuhlthau, who's a professor at Rutgers University, did a study of students who were given a term paper assignment. And Kuhlthau understood the implications of that this would have on search. In fact, she was studying this particularly from an information-seeking perspective. And Kuhlthau found that the learning process consisted of 6 distinct phases. And she studied not only the tasks that were involved in each phase, but also the emotions that the individuals experienced as they went through the process. And the beginning phase, she termed simply initiation. And it's, again, when the student, when the user recognizes the need for information. So for the students, it's when they were handed the term paper assignment. For me, when I was looking for a car, the initiation occurred when my wife and I had that first conversation saying we should start looking into getting a car. And Kuhlthau found that emotions of uncertainty and apprehension were associated with this first phase, as people were just daunted by the whole long process that was most certainly in front of them. But then the second phase is one of selection, where a general topic or direction is committed to. So for the students, it was when they chose a general topic to do their paper on. And for me, it was when I realized that, hey, it's the small family car category that's a good fit for me. And Kuhlthau found that people had a boost in optimism once this initial selection had taken place. But that optimism gave way to emotions of confusion and uncertainty and doubt as the users entered an exploration phase where they sought to explore that category that they'd selected, and just realizing how big that category still is. There were still 100+ cars for me to sift through. And Kuhlthau found that only about half of her students actually made it past this point in the process. So this seems to be there's some sort of blocking point that occurs here for many people in many situations. But if for the people that survive that exploration phase, there's another boost of confidence as the individual clearly formulates their idea. So for the student, it would have been figuring out an exact angle that they wanted to take for their term paper. For me, it was figuring out the exact make and model of the car that I wanted to purchase. Once that formulation had taken place, the second to last step in the process was collecting all of the relevant information, sort of against that formulation. So for me, it was going back to AutoTrader and looking at all the different matches, within my area. And for the students, it would have been, gathering the research that they'd done and sort of extracting that bit of research. And then lastly is some sort of, this whole process culminates ideally in some sort of action. So for me, of course, that was, going and actually buying the car. For the students, it would have been, actually writing the term paper. And I think what's important, or the takeaways from this process, is that search, as we traditionally think about it, is really fits best into the collection phase of the process. AutoTrader is definitely geared for just that one phase, and that side in particular tends to ignore all the other steps in the process. And so I think it's important to realize there's many different tasks that the users will need to accomplish throughout this process. And I think search has something to offer, and certainly the applications that we build with search can help address these needs more than it currently often does. So that's what I'd like to do now, is look at some ways of actually helping users through this learning process. And like we were mentioning earlier, it's not realistic at the beginning of that process to expect users to know, the make and model of the car or the destination for their holiday. It's really important to help them explore. So again, being able to browse, by categories rather than being forced to enter in a query. One site that I really like is called travelmatch.co.uk, and they allow users to view a list of results without even entering a query. And they also offer some really nice flexible filtering options. Because I mean, when you think about going on holiday, you might not care whether it's Spain or Greece or St. Lucia. Your criteria for that vacation might be, you want a nice resort on the beach where there's warm weather. So Travel Match actually lets you filter by the temperature of the destination. So down in the bottom corner, you can see a slider for adjusting the temperature. and other sort of flexible filtering options like that. Data visualization can also help users get a picture of the available options. And it could be immersive, like it is in this example, or it could be more straightforward visualizations, like simple bar charts or sparklines. But once we think about search as not just sort of the individual query, but something that takes place over days, weeks, months, helping users refine things that they found before suddenly becomes much more important and relevant. Google, for instance, tell the user how many times they've clicked the link to visit this particular site, the last time they visited, and as well as using a sort of a visited link color so that you can easily differentiate it. Being able to bookmark items is clearly a way that users can get back to them in the future. E-commerce sites like Amazon are always always telling you the items that you've recently viewed, wanting to be sure that if you ever want to go back and buy one of those, here's the list. And one approach that I really like is what the Nutshell CRM does. When we think about as you type suggestions, they really only apply once the user has started typing a query. So what Nutshell does is, as soon as the user focuses on the search box, they provide a list of recently viewed items, which are then replaced by suggestions once the user types in the query. And I think this is a really good way of placing that information at exactly the point of need. So we can help users explore, we can help them refine things that they've found before. But then there's also, we have sort of this very core need to be able to organize the things that we find. We think about the sketches that we draw on the back of the napkins to organize our thoughts, or the drawers in our desk at home and how we have certain files for different things. And there's different ways that we can help users organize the information that they come across. It could be enabling users to tag items when they bookmark them. Foodily, which is a recipe search site, allow users to sort of create a menu, which is essentially a group, and to place recipes into that menu. Or it could be capturing the relationships between items. This is an example from the I2 Analyst Notebook. So there are many different ways to organize information, but I think that we have a very core need when we're dealing with sort of longer-term, bigger scope projects to be able to arrange information in a certain way. And once we've indicated that certain items are important to us, it's great to be able to get a comparison of the things that we've selected. So this is an example from What Car again, comparing two different cars. And comparisons can take other form as well, such as presenting two pieces of information on the same chart. So along with organizing and comparing the things that you've sort of favorited is annotation, and it's sort of the next logical step. Once you've bookmarked things, to be able to add your own thoughts to them. So this is an example from Glowbricks, which is a property search site. And here's 3 items that I've bookmarked. I can go in and add descriptions or comments on each to help me remember which one is which, as well as add a rating. And so these are a few ways that we can help people throughout the entire learning process. But in addition to lookup and learning, there's the third category, which is investigation. Like I was mentioning earlier, investigating is more about actually pushing information back to the user. So whereas the other two types of search had very distinct sort of processes that the user had to go through, investigation is much more about sort of the system, keeping an eye on things and alerting the user whenever something changes in the situation. And definitely a key part of this is monitoring. And there's several different ways which we can help users monitor certain topics. It could be being able to save a search so that you could come back to it later. In fact, when I was looking for a car, once I identified the exact make and model that I wanted, I then sort of kept close eye, on AutoTrader every day, doing the exact same search, waiting for that good deal to come up that was way cheaper than all the others, and so that was certainly sort of a monitoring activity. Google Alerts, of course, allows you to type in certain search terms and be alerted through an email sort of every day or every week with new items matching that. Another property search site called Prime Location, I was getting emails from them sort of every day for too long, I believe, but again, helping users keep track of new properties that come onto the market. And certainly in finance, this is a big deal. Being able to execute trades when certain events in the market happen, and certainly when we think of more sort of professional, sort of advanced applications, maybe business intelligence or market analysis. A lot of these things apply especially to those types of applications. But in addition to monitoring information, I think collaborating with other people is also a key part to many of our search activities. Certainly in my case, I wasn't the only one deciding which car to buy. And there's been, I think there will be more and more companies who try to take advantage of the social networks that we're a part of, seeing who our friends are on Facebook and the things that they've liked, or figuring out what our friends on Twitter like, and using that to influence the search results that we get. And that's part of it, sort of tailoring the results themselves. But there's also the more active side of actually two people who are collaborating on the same project and need to share information. One interesting example of this is a site called myregistry.com, which is for if you're getting married or having a baby, you can go on here and make your registry across. You can pull in products from any different website across the web. And when you add an item to your registry, you can place it in a category. You can add a description, and you can also have two accounts working on the same registry. So you and your partner can both be adding things, and they also do a nice job of letting you take your registry with you. So if you're in the store, you can scan a barcode, and that product will get added to your registry. So while the execution may not be perfect, I think there's a lot of concepts in there that could easily be applied to wider projects. Google Bookmarks is perhaps another example of collaboration, and you can create I think they call it, maybe it's just a bookmark group, but you can share that group with other people. Each person can go in and comment on each bookmarked item, as well as comment on the group as a whole. And so while I think these collaboration examples especially aren't perfect, and I think still leave a lot to be desired, I think that this will be a sort of a key area in the coming years, and helping people collaboratively carry out these search activities. So I guess why is all this important, and why should we think about search as in a wider context? And I think the key reasons are that if we can engage users earlier on in the process, we're more likely to be able to turn them into really passionate customers and to be able to form a more long-lasting relationship with them. So the travel match example, for instance, their strategy is, they want people to next time they book a holiday, just come straight to Travel Match, do everything on their site, and sort of build that long-term trust that will help you find where you want to go, and as well, not just simply execute the purchase. So it is about building, I think, long-term relationships with customers. And then also, if you engage them early on in the process, I think you're more likely to be able to actually make that transaction with the user in the end. And of course, the end goal, of course, is to provide value to our users, to make their lives easier, and that's how we bring value to our businesses. So I applaud everyone who showed up here. It's a developer conference, and we're talking about user experience. So I appreciate the open-mindedness that you've exhibited just by showing up here. If you are interested more in the user experience of search, 3 great books are Search User Interfaces by Marty Hurst, Search Patterns by Peter Morville, and there's a new one coming out next week, I think, by Greg Noodleman called Designing Search, and it has a lot of very practical advice, and it's geared towards e-commerce specifically, but another great one to add to the bookshelf, I believe. And these are a few of the papers that went into some of these concepts. The slides will be made available, I think, like a week after the conference or something, so you can look these up. I'd also like to briefly mention an initiative that we're a part of called Enterprise Search Meetups, and we started a search meetup in London maybe about 2 years ago, I think, and there's since been a number of meetups started sort of as offshoots of that one, and so we've got, you can see the list at the bottom. We're, I guess, well represented in Europe, but we definitely need some more throughout the States for sure. So I just encourage you, if there's not a search meetup in your area, to go start one. Check out the website for some of our story of how we got started and tips for how to do it yourself. And again, thanks everyone for coming, and I'd love to answer questions, but thank you.
Curious to hear your thoughts on the step function that you outlined, I think, learn, explore, investigate, if I get that right. Mm-hmm. Increasingly, a lot of the social network, as you mentioned, the social graph is coming in to help you decide where do you go, what you pick. Would you say it's almost a preemptive strike the moment you encounter that, the ladder of the step function doesn't even matter anymore?
So is it a preemptive strike? What do you mean by that?
Well, so the search experience you described can be morphed into those 3 steps. And let's say I begin my search through the learn part of it, and then I encounter my colleague or my friend who's made that purchase. What I'm saying is, then the investigate part of the following 2 steps don't even matter at that point. Is that a trend that you see sort of going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think a key part of especially the learning process is, we learn by doing research online, but we also learn by, we would prefer to learn by asking the people that we trust. It's if there's a colleague sitting beside us who knows the answer to the question we have, we would probably prefer just asking that person rather than trying to spend 15 minutes researching it on Google. So I think there is a lot of there's a lot of power in the recommendations of people that we trust, and I think the social search is sort of trying to exploit that, and I think it's Yeah, I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction. I guess there are some risks that we'll sort of be pigeonholed into only thinking like the people around us think. But I think it's a step in the right direction. Although a lot of times, maybe our social networks aren't wide enough to provide good recommendations on certain types of things. But yeah, I do think it's a step in the right direction.
Do you think Lookup and Explore UI can be together in the search page?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think sort of at the foundation of this is Lookup is obviously still is crucial. It's the bit that that you have to get right. So I sort of see it as Lookup is involved with individual queries, whereas learning, investigating, exploring is concerned with how a bunch of queries fit together. So I do think that it can certainly be part of the same interface. I mean, if we just look at the auto trader example, things that they could do to facilitate the holistic process would be help people figure out which cars they want to buy in the first place, and as well as help them share their results with others. If they provided a facility for my wife and I to say, hey, look at this car, these are ones we really like, and sort of annotates the different cars with our own thoughts, our own ratings. I think it's certainly possible to meet the needs of users throughout the whole process, in a single application. Yeah.
What do you think is the best way to train your users?
Right. So I think what you mean by that is maybe you have some advanced feature.
I'm thinking about do you expect them to click around to figure things out themselves?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times, I guess right along with that, we go through a lot of effort to provide, some great faceted navigation and things, and then you look at usage stats, and like less than half of people, actually use it, and I think it's quite a tough one. Google Bookmarks, for instance, it's how long has it been there? I'm not actually sure. I just discovered it like a few weeks ago. You basically click on the star beside the title, and that's how you bookmark results. And it's probably been there for ages, and I just never realized it. I think some of the things that you can do to help train users is to I think a simple thing that you could do would be to provide some sort of help or popover contextual cues to the user, perhaps on the first time they visit your site, or the Foodly example, for instance. The first time that you go to foodly.com, they actually provide, they actually show a small popover next to one of their sort of slightly unorthodox features, and explains to the user what it does. And the user can either dismiss that notification, or they can say, oh, please show me the next tip. And I think they have maybe 3 or 4 tips. So I think that's that's one thing that you could do to help train users. I think you have to balance between being helpful and just ignoring users with these things popping up on the screen. So perhaps that's one way that you could accomplish it. Yeah. So the question was for just general information on Twigkit, and is it open source? Yeah, Twigkit is the core product is a commercial product, and it's a framework for building search applications. So we essentially have a library of UI components for faceted navigation, autocomplete, pagination, all everything you need to do search, and that are very easy to add to your application. We're also working on a slightly different approach that uses just takes JSON data and renders it with simple HTML templates that will be open source. So you can keep an eye out on our blog for that. It should be coming in the next couple of weeks. But. Yes.
So now with all the user personalization that we do and the click-through analysis that we do and the preferences that they tell us and what we know from their actual activity, we tailor all of our results to their activity. So how do we complement the knowledge discovery or the information discovery that a person will eventually stop having the opportunity because they're being fed results that confirm everything that they already told us they like? Do you see an opportunity for doing something at the user level that allows users to actually discover new things in their browser?
Yeah, I think that's a big challenge, and one of the risks that I mentioned earlier in terms of getting sort of a tunnel vision. I think one thing that we've probably all been frustrated by, maybe Amazon, recommending silly products to us because we bought our nephew, a gift or something, and so I think perhaps designing some sort of a feature that allows the system to be sort of where you can just tell the system, hey, discount this from my personalized recommendations, please. Ignore this purchase. But in terms of discovering new items. You could always, invite the user to, like, let's say your Netflix or a movie rental site to go out and add ratings to movies in exchange of movies that you've seen to rate them in exchange for getting more personalized results. But I think we just have to be careful not to always leave, to try to leave a bit of room for serendipity, and and just try to make sure, although it's a very fine line, I think, that the users aren't getting only very personalized results, but leaving some room for just general results as well. But I think it's a tough problem. Great. Well, thanks everyone again for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.